When you think about the ancient Near East, it's just this constant swirl, isn't it? Empires rising, falling, power struggles everywhere.
Absolutely. And today we're diving into, well, a really intense chapter. It focuses on Nebuchadnezzar, the Assyrian one, ruling from Nineveh, not the later Babylonian king people often think of.
Right, good clarification. And his clashes, starting with Arphaxad, the Median king over in Ecbatana.
Exactly. But it quickly spirals out from there, doesn't it? It becomes this much bigger story about trying to dominate the whole Western region and how those places reacted, especially Judea.
Yeah, that's what we really want to get into today. We've got these texts, these accounts, and we want to use them to figure out, what was really going on.
What were the motivations? Why these massive campaigns?
What was the impact? Particularly, as you said, on Judea. It's a chance for you, listening, to really get inside this key moment in history using the records we actually have.
So where do we start? Nebuchadnezzar versus Arphaxad, right? The setup is Nebuchadnezzar's 12th year as king in Nineveh, Arphaxad's in Ecbatana.
And Arphaxad city, Ecbatana, it sounds like he really went all out building it up. The descriptions are pretty detailed.
Oh, incredibly so.
Hmm?
The sources talk about these walls built with huge hewn stones, like 6 cubits long, 3 thick, 70 cubits high, 50 wide.
That's massive.
It is. And the gates, 70 cubits high, 40 wide, towers reaching 100 cubits, on foundations 60 cubits wide. I mean, this isn't just building a wall.
No, it's a statement.
It's definitely projecting power, maybe showing he wasn't intimidated, or perhaps he was and felt he needed this kind of defense.
Either way, Nebuchadnezzar comes against him. They fight on this plain near Rego. And Nebuchadnezzar isn't alone, is he? He's got backup.
Yeah, quite a bit of backup, actually. The texts list various groups from the hill country, people living along the big rivers Euphrates, Tigris, even the Hydaspes.
So a wide net.
A very wide net. Plus, Arioch, king of the Elamites and the Cheladites. It shows Nebuchadnezzar was, well, pretty skilled at building alliances, pulling together this coalition.
Okay, so he's got strength in numbers, not just his own army. But then he pushes further, looking west. And this is where things really start to affect Judea and its neighbors.
Right. He sends out this call for even more support, and the list of places he contacts is just vast.
It really covers the map, doesn't it?
It does. Persia, Cilicia, Damascus, Lebanon, Anti-Lebanon, all the coastal areas, Carmel, Gilead, Upper Galilee, Esdraelon, then Samaria, its cities.
And further south?
Yeah, west of the Jordan, right down to Jerusalem, Bethany, Chaluz, Kadesh, the river of Egypt, all the way into Egypt itself, Tanis, Memphis, up to the Ethiopian border. It's like he wants the whole known world, or his part of it, involved.
He's thinking big, so how do they respond in the West? Do they sign up?
Not quite. It's actually a major snub. The texts say they basically ignored him. They weren't afraid, didn't see him as this great power, maybe.
Or maybe just too far away, felt disconnected.
Could be. Whatever the reason, his messengers come back with nothing. Worse than nothing, they return totally disgraced, humiliated.
Ouch. That's not going to sit well with a king like Nebuchadnezzar.
No, not at all. The texts say he was absolutely furious, livid.
And he makes some kind of declaration.
He swears an oath. By his throne, by his kingdom, he vows revenge. And he names names.
Who's on the list?
Philistia, Damascus, Syria, Moab, Ammon. And then crucially, all of Judea and Egypt, right down to the Mediterranean and Red Sea coasts of the two seas.
So Judea is explicitly targeted now because they didn't join him.
Exactly. That refusal becomes the justification for what comes next.
Yeah.
It's a really ominous moment.
Okay, so time passes. We jump to Nebuchadnezzar's 17th year. He circles back to Arphaxad. And this time...
This time, it's decisive. Nebuchadnezzar wins. Big time. Arphaxad's army, all that cavalry and chariots, gets routed.
And Ecbatana, those huge walls.
Breached. Nebuchadnezzar takes the city, sacks it, tears down the towers, pillages the marketplaces. Arphaxad himself tries to flee into the mountains, the Rago region, but he's caught.
And killed.
Yes, captured and killed, end of Arphaxad. Nebuchadnezzar has cemented his power in the east.
So victory secure, he heads back home to Nineveh, and there's a celebration.
A massive one. The texts mention 120 days of feasting and celebrating with his forces. A huge victory party, basically.
But that oath about the West, he hasn't forgotten, has he?
Not for a second. Almost immediately after, in his 18th year, first month, 22nd day, the sources are very specific, there's a council meeting.
In the palace?
Yes. He lays it all out for his advisors, recounts how the Western lands defied him, refused his command, and the decision is made.
To act on the oath.
To utterly destroy them, to make an example of everyone who disobeyed. This is the moment the plan for the Western campaign, led by Holofernes, is formally set in motion.
Right. Holofernes, Nebuchadnezzar's top general, second in command.
Yeah.
And the scale of this new operation is huge from the start.
It's staggering. He's ordered to assemble 120,000 infantry, 12,000 cavalry.
Just enormous numbers for the time.
Absolutely massive.
Yeah.
And the mission is crystal clear. Go west, subdue everyone who disobeyed, punish them.
And the message Holofernes carries isn't subtle.
No, it's blunt. Demand earth and water. That classic symbol of total surrender. Give us control of your land, your resources, everything.
Or else.
Or else face the full force of this army. Overrun, conquered, exiled. The threat is overwhelming.
And if any cities or regions still resist?
The orders are explicit. Show no mercy. Slaughter, plunder, total devastation. It's meant to inspire terror.
So Holofernes gets to work, gathers his commanders, his troops. You mentioned cavalry, but also mounted archers.
Yes, 12,000 mounted archers, specifically mentioned, adds a whole other layer of mobile threat. And the logistics behind this.
Must have been insane. How do you even feed an army that big?
Well, the texts mention a massive supply train, huge numbers of camels, donkeys, mules carrying provisions, and incredible amounts of livestock, sheep, cattle, goats driven along with them, plus food stores, gold, silver from the treasury. This is a long-haul operation.
They're prepared for a serious campaign. How quickly do they move out?
Very quickly. From Nineveh, they reach the plain of Bechdolith, which is near the mountains north of Upper Cilicia, in just 3 days. Set up a base camp there.
And then the campaign begins in earnest. It sounds like a wave of destruction rolling west.
It really is. Put and Lud are devastated. The Rassasites, the Ishmaelites, plundered. He sweeps through Mesopotamia, taking fortified cities along the Wadi Abron, reaches the Mediterranean.
Take Cilicia.
Yep, conquers Cilicia, crushes any opposition there, then turns south towards Arabia, hitting the Midianites.
How are they dealt with?
Brutally. Surrounds their tents, burns them down, sacks their camps. Total destruction of their way of life.
Then he moves towards Damascus.
Right into the plain of Damascus, specifically during the wheat harvest. That's deliberate.
Cripple their food supply.
Exactly. Burn the fields, destroy the flocks and herds, loot the cities, kill the young men. Just absolute devastation across the plains. The goal seems to be to leave nothing behind that could support resistance.
And the effect on the coastal cities must have been pure terror.
You can imagine. Word spreads fast. Sidon, Tyre, Sur, Osina, Jamnia, Azotus, Ascalon, they all see what's happening.
And they react how?
They send messengers immediately, suing for peace, basically saying, we surrender completely. Take whatever you want, our homes, our land, our resources, us. Just don't destroy us like the others. Total capitulation.
Does Holofernes accept?
He does, in a way.
Yes.
He occupies their cities, puts garrisons in place. He even takes some of their men as auxiliaries for his own army. They receive him with celebrations, garlands, music, trying to appease him.
But it's not entirely peaceful, is it? There's a twist.
There is. While he doesn't raise the cities that submit, he does devastate their surrounding territories. And critically, he destroys their sacred sites, their holy groves.
Oh, what's the point of that?
It's about enforcing singular loyalty. Wipe out local worship, make everyone worship Nebuchadnezzar alone. It's military, political, and religious domination.
Okay. So after securing the coast, Holofernes moves inland, closer to Judea.
Yes, he sets up camp near Judea, in the plain of Esdraelon, near a place called Dothan, between Geba and Scythopolis. And the text says he stays there for a whole month.
A month? Why so long?
To gather supplies, replenish everything his massive army needs before the next phase, which, everyone must have known, was likely Judea itself. The threat is now right on their doorstep.
Right. So let's shift perspective now. How are the Israelites in Judea reacting to all this? They must be hearing the news.
Oh, absolutely. The texts say they were terrified. They knew exactly what Holofernes had done to other nations, how he'd looted and destroyed their temples and shrines.
And for them, Jerusalem and their own temple, that would be the ultimate disaster.
Especially because, as the sources mentioned, they'd only recently returned from exile. Their temple had been purified and rededicated not long before this. The timing couldn't be worse. It felt like everything they'd just rebuilt was about to be destroyed again.
So what do? Facing this, well, seemingly unstoppable force, they can't match Holofernes militarily, can they?
Not an open battle, no. So their response is twofold. First, practical defense. Second, intense spiritual action.
Okay, let's break that down. Practical defense.
They send word out across the region, particularly Samaria, places like Kona, Beth-horon, Belmain, Jericho. Fortify the hilltops, strengthen the villages, gather up all the food provisions they can now that the harvest is in.
Who's organizing this?
Joachim, the high priest in Jerusalem, seems central. He writes specifically to the people in Bethulia and Betomas time,
Where are they?
strategically vital spots. They overlook the plain of Esdraelon near Dothan, where Holofernes is camped, and crucially, they control the mountain passes leading into Judea.
Choke points.
Exactly. The text emphasizes how narrow these passes were, maybe only wide enough for two people side by side, perfect for defense against a much larger force trying to push through.
Smart. Did the people follow his instructions?
Yes, it seems there's unity. They followed Joachim's orders and the guidance from the Senate, the Council of Elders in Jerusalem. They secured those passes.
Okay, so that's the practical side. What about the spiritual response? You said it was intense.
Incredibly intense. The entire population, it seems, men, women, children, even resident aliens, hired workers, slaves, everyone put on sackcloth. It's a sign of deep mourning, repentance, humility,
And prayer.
constant fervent prayer. They cried out to God. In Jerusalem, people prostrated themselves right in front of the temple, put ashes on their heads, spread sackcloth on the ground, even draped the altar itself in sackcloth.
Wow, a whole community mobilized in supplication.
Completely. They're begging God to save them from capture, from ruin, and especially from the profanation of their sanctuary, their holy place.
Does the text say anything about whether this worked? Spiritually, I mean.
It does. It explicitly states, the Lord heard their cry and saw their distress. The fasting and praying continued, not just in Jerusalem, but throughout Judea.
Even the priests.
Yes, Joachim and all the priests serving with him wore sackcloth too. They continued the daily offerings, the burnt offerings, voluntary ones, votive ones, but they did it all with ashes on their turbans, pleading constantly for God to favor the house of Israel. It's this picture of total reliance on divine help combined with determined, practical defense.
So let's pull this together then. We've seen Nebuchadnezzar's power grow after beating Arphaxad. We've seen his ambition turn west, leading to this brutal campaign under Holofernes.
A campaign that just steamrolled nation after nation, using sheer terror and military might, bringing this massive army right up to the edge of Judea.
And then we see the Israelites' reaction. Not just fear, but this really interesting mix of fortifying strategic passes and this incredibly intense community-wide appeal to God for protection.
Yeah, it really sets the stage, doesn't it? You have this clash brewing, the seemingly invincible Assyrian war machine versus this small nation recently restored, banking on both strategic defense and their faith.
It makes you wonder, looking at it from their perspective back then, what hope could they possibly have had? I mean, based on Holofernes' track record so far.
Exactly. Militarily, the odds look impossible, which forces you to ask what other factors might even come into play here. What does this whole narrative tell us looking back about how power works, how people resist overwhelming force, and, well, the role belief plays when everything seems lost?
It definitely leaves you thinking, what happens when unstoppable force well, perhaps not immovable objects, but deeply determined people relying on something beyond the physical? That's the question hanging in the air.